Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Kurek, your host for Frontrunners Innovate and the president of Frontrunners Development, a global business development company built on connecting impact partners. So our clients, our partners, literally all over the world. We call them our world's problem solvers. So today's guest is one of those. It's Arielle Molino. And Arielle is head of the Sankalp, if I said that right, Sankalp Forum, and as such, she sits under the Intellecap Advisory Services organization. I believe it is headquartered in Nairobi, but the event itself will be held in Ghana, and I think this is just one of several events, but we will talk about that more in a little bit. I would like to introduce you to a new partner of mine and colleague, Raymond, Enoch. And Raymond is actually in Nigeria and heads Paradigms Communication Company. He's a publisher and CEO of that. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself. But I want to tell you, we're here to learn about catalyzation of collaboration of an entrepreneurship-led development for West Africa, and hopefully as a role model or a model, if you want to call it that, for all of Africa. And I guess this isn't something new, but we're going to find out all about it today. Raymond, I'm going to turn it over to you. So why don't you share a little bit about what you do at Paradigms, and we'll get started with Arielle. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mary, for your time, and thank you, listeners, and also thank you, Arielle, for coming on board. Paradigm Communications is legally incorporated in Nigeria as a social enterprise news medium committed to development practice in the media sector, particularly specializing on international reporting and putting out the information out there in a credible and reliable manner. Having said that, for the last 2-3 years of our existence, we've been able to build a credible network of participation, and that is what informed even the discussion we are doing today with entities such as Frontrunners, Frontrunners Development Incorporation in the US, and we are also happen to have an opportunity to promote the first West Africa Sankalp Forum, which is a summit coming up sometimes in June, precisely June 12 and 13 in Accra, Ghana. Besides that, we are also in partnership with several organizations across Africa to promote what we do, and particularly we've been able to have a relationship with International Fund for Fertilizer. International Fertilizer Development Center in the US, and that has also snowballed our relationship with a lot of UN systems, and we are hopefully going into a partnership with African Union Commission very soon. So these are a couple of things that we've been doing apart from local news reporting in Nigeria.
Fantastic. I appreciate that little introduction of what you do, because you're far more than just a media publication. But I love the fact that you have partnered with Arielle's organization and with the forum to be able to help them move the promotion of this forward, because I really think it's very important. So Arielle, now we're on to finding out a little bit more about you. You're our guest of honor today. So thank you for jumping in so quickly and letting us hear a little bit more about you and what you're doing. So give us a little bit of your background. How did you get to Africa to do what you're doing, with Sankalp?
Thank you so much, Mary, and Raymond, thank you both for the invitation, for having me here today. I will honestly say, Mary, I think it was a complete accident, or as I usually say, the universe conspires. So I think it was a conspiracy theory. My background is actually in anthropology. I was studying paleoanthropology when I was in university, and I did a field school in Kenya in Kubifora, kind of realized fairly quickly that I was not prepared to spend exorbitant amounts of money on my PhD to continue sort of in the academic space. And I actually ended up returning to Kenya shortly after graduation to volunteer. So sort of typical sort of volunteering experience. And several years later, I actually was really interested in this idea of social entrepreneurship and this idea that businesses are a way to achieve sustainable development, and that communities and countries and individuals have far more resources than we're necessarily being leveraged, I would say. So in that process, I returned to Kenya some years later to run an immersion program with American college students. I met my husband, then co-worker, I guess, who is Kenyan. So the rest is kind of history. Yeah, my husband is Kenyan, my babies are Kenyan. So it's sort of a mix of personal and accidental things that brought me. And I really wanted to learn more about this space. And that's how I actually ended up working with, I was doing a fellowship in India. So Intellecap's headquarters are actually in India, not in Nairobi. We have a satellite office in Nairobi, which is where I am based. But one of my co-fellows was working with Intellecap at the time, and she was like, hey, I know you're trying to get back to Kenya. These people, they want to set up this forum thing, and they want to go to Kenya, and I think you'd be a really great fit. And that was 10 years ago. So the rest is kind of history, I would say. So that's actually, I ended up with an Indian company working in Kenya, now expanding to West Africa. So the anthropologist piece sort of all comes back full circle, I would say.
Fantastic. So interesting that you would say that you think social entrepreneurship is sort of the pathway to sustainable development. You know, I work with some people who believe the same thing, that it's really not so much charity or philanthropy that's really going to get you there. It's going to be training people to use their businesses for the good, and understanding that if you can do that, then you have the impact, and that people who can make a living doing good will continue making a living doing good, and therefore the sustainability factors there. So that is really interesting. I think maybe now might be a good time for you to tell us, since you kind of came to back to Kenya for the forum, I think that to maybe develop that. Tell us a little bit about the development of the forum and how it's taking shape now.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. So the Sankalp Forum as an initiative was actually started back in 2009 in India. And we expanded to East Africa in 2014. That's when I joined. And we started, way back, 15 years ago as, a platform thinking, oh, well, we'll connect investors and entrepreneurs and it'll be, nice kumbaya, and quickly realized, a couple of things. One is that investments do not happen after a 5 or 15-minute pitch on stage, right? They take months, if not years, especially in these emerging markets. So that was one learning. And then the second learning was that, there are so many more stakeholders than just investors and entrepreneurs that are critical for the health of this ecosystem. So, because our work really centers around creating that enabling environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. That is what Sankalp does, right? And no single one of us can do that independently or alone. So I think this, as we talk about collaborations and the power of partnerships, I actually think it's a very humbling perspective to recognize and kind of give that up and say, I can't do it all. My organization can't do it all. And that's really what Sankalp embraced at that time in India. And yes, we expanded to East Africa, specifically Nairobi, which is where I sort of set up shop and started the office there. And in an interesting perspective of really being keen on this South-South learning and South-South collaboration. And that's really where now we get into also the West African market is, I think there is far more to learn, to exchange, to share, from India, from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Southeast Asia, than from Silicon Valley, or from Berlin, or from London, and sort of the solutions and the innovation that we are seeing, and the interventions to scale some of these businesses and these interventions. If it can work in India or if it can work in Nigeria, it can work anywhere. And I think that's a really beautiful thing about what we're trying to do at Sankalp from that experience in the past as well, from the previous geographies that we've hosted summits in.
Raymond, it looks like you want to say something or ask something. Go ahead.
Yes, we are delighted to have to connect with this process at this point in time. A process we started having to promote an enabling environment for ecosystem to thrive. And we think Paradigm Communications as a media company is pleased to assist and connect at this point in time to promote these ideals. And we think it is appropriate that for Africa to prosper, and particularly the rural sector, which is where most of economic development have been negated over years. So we think for Sankalp Summit to hold at this point in time, it's really coming at the right time. That's number one. Then secondly, commend the initiators of Intellecap, who thought since 2009 to relate this common paradigm shift, not only happen at the Asian angle, but to take place in Africa and some part of the world. Because I've read so much about the forum process on the website of the organization, and I'm thinking that if we were able to succeed in hosting the first West Africa Summit in Accra, Ghana, definitely sure Ghana and Nigeria does not only share borders, but they are one of the leading populace or leading economies in West Africa. And in fact, in Africa, Nigeria being the most populous Black country in the world. So we think that it is an appropriate time for these ecosystems to really have an opportunity to find an inroad in collaboration with governments, collaboration with private partnerships, and in collaboration with not only the media, but even the civil society in driving the benefit of this initiative going forward. I will stop here, maybe probably to await any other question that might come, so that not to dominate the discussion.
You know, you brought up something really nice, though, Raymond, that I wrote a note about it and wanted to bring it back up again. I think I mentioned to you before, Arielle, and I probably need to make the point again. It's really interesting to me that entrepreneurs who are starting out usually don't have, within the first couple of years, the marketing team or the sales team that they need to really push them forward. That's usually the first expenditure that a lot of, when they get investment dollars, do spend on that. But to the point that they need to get ready for investment, they don't have that. And the way that I think that at least that I found, because I am a business developer and I can see it, that it works for them. And it works not only for private business, it works for any kind of problem, big problem around the world that exists. It works for when you're trying to get a smart city put somewhere, or some infrastructure for a bridge or something somewhere. Or in Ghana's case, not long ago, we had entertained a conversation with a business developer who's trying to work with the chancellor of a university. They need youth hostels so bad. So those are not easy problems to solve, and that doesn't come from an entrepreneurship adventure. So that's something that comes from somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. It comes from a network. And it comes from business developers who know each other and know that if they don't have that solution, somebody else in their network of business developers does. So from the standpoint of finding the right resources who facilitate business for entrepreneurs, yes, as investors, you're right. There's a bigger ecosystem than you probably even knew at the very beginning. But there's people like me who get involved and help that innovator from New Zealand, make some connections here in the United States because he's trying to move his product here, or helps that that other business that's here that got slammed in the face during the pandemic. He was started, then he had to stall out, and then he's trying to restart again and trying to find the funding that needs to happen to put in place. Well, that's not easily done if you don't have 2 years of revenue already rolling, if you're already on market, because it doesn't look good, even though investors understand the pandemic messed around with people. but, they still have to put their money somewhere, and they got to be trusting that. So, there are those consultants that will help you get your ducks in, or your business legal documents and everything in a row. So there's those patent attorneys, there's those, business developers and that sort of thing in that space. But there's also the people that will help you find those initial leads to, to potential customers, where you can get a letter of intent maybe from them before you even do business, because you don't have your inventory or your product on market quite yet, or get you connected with a government who needs your product or service. That's happening with me right now, with somebody. So I think that odd little person that fits in between the mix of all those things might be somebody else to include in the work they do. Because honestly, like I said, the situation from Ghana that put me in touch with a construction person here locally came from a business developer there. Boots on the ground.
Exactly.
So that's what it is. It's boots on the ground.
Exactly.
So,
and I love that so much, Mary. If I can just quickly comment.
Yeah.
So the sort of approach and the lens that we take to sort of building these ecosystems and this space is sort of this trifecta of capital, knowledge, and networks. So capital, if you ask any entrepreneur what they need, their answer is always going to be money. So I'll give it. Money is important. The investors are important. The angel investors are important. The banks and the debt, they're all very important.
Yeah.
But the knowledge, like you're saying, the knowledge, how to run a business, how to recruit, how to retain talent, how to build that financial model. What are investors looking for? How to prepare for due diligence, how to understand those term sheets. Those business advisors and support organizations and consultants and incubators and accelerators that are supporting that knowledge. And then the networks piece, like you're saying, right? If you have the money and you have the knowledge, but you don't know the investors, then what are you going to do? If you have the knowledge and the network, but you don't have the money to build your business, then you're still kind of out of luck. So we look at these three pillars as highly interconnected and of equal importance, right? Because you really need all three for that entrepreneur to be able to grow and thrive. And I think there's a lot of, there is a lot more attention now going to softer elements, things like talent, things like coaching, things like mental health for entrepreneurs. These are things that have never really come to the fore in the past. And I mean, I'm speaking from a decade of experience of a lot of these conversations. And these are things that have come up just in the last 3 to 4 years, but that are so important for the fundamental foundations of these businesses in order for them to grow and to create that impact and to scale that impact sustainably. So I love that, Mary, and I think you're really hit the nail on the head in terms of the depth of the things that are being provided and the breadth of, we're seeing incubators and accelerators be outside of tier 1 cities. It used to be they were all in Nairobi.
Yes, all in the big
really
cities.
Same with Accra, right? And now you're starting to see them in Kumasi. You're starting to see them outside of some of these major cities, and I think that's a really, really positive trend. We still have a long way to go, but
Gotta start somewhere, right?
Got to start somewhere.
So let's talk about the event itself. So kind of walk us through, from the beginning that you start, where you start and where you end up, because I looked a little bit at the website and it looks like you've got definitely some really wonderful pieces built in and some geographic separation, so that people, if they're looking in these particular areas, that would be cool. So share with us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary. So we're looking at a 1.5-day event, about 300 people from across West Africa. We're very intentional about not only being for Anglophone West Africa. Most of the countries in the region are Francophone, and we're really being very intentional about putting a spotlight on some of those countries. So doing country spotlights on Sierra Leone, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo. This is really intended to sort of put a positive spotlight on, I'll say, traditionally ignored or left behind, some of these emerging markets that have not been able to attract as much investment in the past as they're their Anglophone neighbors. So Sankalp will really be a mix of different sessions. We have about 20, I think, on the agenda. Some of these are workshops for entrepreneurs in terms of how you identify investors, what are you looking for when you're doing your due diligence on investors, which you should do. You shouldn't just let them do it on you. The number of workshops to really upskill and provide that knowledge that we talked about to entrepreneurs, a number of showcases to really make the connections between the entrepreneurs and the capital providers that are there. We have a climate-focused deal room, so we'll be featuring some entrepreneurs that are really focused on agriculture, clean energy, waste management, and circular economy. So that's really exciting. And then we have a number of sessions related to agriculture, healthcare, gender, financing, impact investments. So, it's very much sector agnostic, but impact focused. But Sankalp doesn't end with sort of the traditional session. A lot of people who come to Sankalp never even step foot in the room. They just sort of network the entire time. So we have a really fantastic AI-powered networking platform that all our attendees get access to, and it makes it super easy to understand who's there, who's interested in similar sectors, what are the investors that are looking at, specific ticket size, specific geographic area, specific sector, and you can really set those meetings up super easily at any number of our meeting points. And then we have just some fun stuff that I'm excited about. We have an electric vehicle test track that will be up. So folks who are there can take a spin around some of the electric vehicles that some of our entrepreneurs are working with. We are having a sustainable fashion show. So anyone who's interested in circular apparel, for those of you who don't know that fashion is one of the most polluting industries in the world globally. So we're really focusing on more sustainable approaches to apparel, and we'll be featuring some fashion designers in that regard. So yeah, just there'll be some formal stuff, some fun stuff, and a ton of networking for everyone who's there. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Raymond, did you have a question? I love Zoom.
Yes, yes, Mary, a quick one. I have listened to your presentation on Sankalp Forum designed to respond to entrepreneurship needs of West African economies, particularly the startups. Do you have
We got part of it. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zoom does this once in a while.
any design specifically address this? My wish to apply thereafter and connect with the Intellecap after the summit.
Connections after the summit. Yes. So yes, every year, actually not every year, sorry, every summit. So we do 4 summits a year. We run the Sankalp Awards program. So we actually have identified 10 finalists from across the region that we'll bring into Sankalp, because we can't support everyone all year round because it takes a long time. But for those 10 finalists that we'll showcase, we've introduced them to a number of investors already. We'll introduce them to more investors at Sankalp, and we will support them through, introducing them to investors, preparing them for some of those investor conversations, helping them prepare for their financial projections, et cetera, and giving them feedback all along the way, also that we are getting from our external investors when they're having these interactions. So we do support them post the event, and to help sort of push them towards those investments, because as Sankalp, we are not able to give the funding ourselves, but we really try to connect and link them and prepare them for those interactions with the investors that do have capital to deploy. And we have had a couple, we have definitely seen some successes with that, but unfortunately, we're not able to follow all 300 people post event. But yeah, so we do follow up with the enterprises that we sort of support in the run up to the summit.
Okay, the last one quickly. How do you intend to relate with the ECOWAS as a body, because it is like the constitutive body that relates with not just economic activities of the region, but like the entity that regulates a lot of activity that happens in the region. So how do you plan to relate with ECOWAS Commission?
Yes, yes. So we have invited them. If they're listening, please respond to my emails because I haven't heard back from anyone, but would love to have them attend, and not just ECOWAS, Raymond. You know, I think there's a lot of stakeholders that have these interregional plays. The AFCTA, the AFDB, a lot of aid and development agencies that do regional programming that are looking at cross-regional trade. And it's my hope to have them at Sankalp and to be part of these conversations and to be part of, to be sensitized. You know, I think it's very easy to sit in your office and assume you know everything. And because Sankalp is so entrepreneur-centric, we are making sure that we have entrepreneurs almost in every conversation, that I really want, you know, the ECOWAS and the FCTAs and the AFDBs and the USAIDs and the alphabet soup of these institutions out there, to really understand firsthand what the challenges are, not just from an entrepreneur perspective, but even from the investor perspective, from the perspective of the entrepreneur support organizations that Mary mentioned earlier. There are so many systemic challenges. And I think, Raymond, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's a paradigm shift. These institutions need to be part of the paradigm shift. They can't get it fed to them later. By then, I think it's too late. I think they need to be part of these conversations at the outset. My hope is that it's not just getting them to the summit, but that we can build longer-term relationships with them and engage them in our year-round work, and not just in West Africa, but in East Africa and in South Asia. Again, I think there are so many opportunities for collaboration and seeing where things have worked in other markets, or positive trends that we could pick up, or challenges that could be learned from. So yes, I hope they come. If you have a connection, Raymond, I would be happy to, I'll follow up with you on that. So you can help me get them to Sankalp.
So lastly, I am due to be in Abuja before the commencement of the summit. I will be delighted to have the communications with ECOWAS so that I can help follow up physically in Nigeria with the Secretariat of the ECOWAS Commission. And the same thing with Ghana, because I was expressing the same concern with Kanishka, and I think it is good that we follow up with the Ghanaian authorities who are the host, and then ECOWAS Commission, because we need this process to snowball even after the summit. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Raymond. See, collaboration happening right there. So thank you for that, Raymond.
Every time I have an interview, every time. That's great. So the organizations that you were talking about that he was going to help with, the first one you mentioned was what?
ECOWAS.
ECOWAS. Okay.
Yes.
What are these? What are these regulatory bodies? Explain to me who they are.
Yeah. So ECOWAS is an economic bloc of the West African countries,
West African states.
Okay. States. Yeah. Okay. All right.
And yeah, the AFCTA is the Africa Free Trade and Continental Agreement. So they are actually headquartered in Accra and really trying to promote and develop better intra-Africa trade, which is super, super important, especially when we're talking about scale, because unless you're in a country like Nigeria, like Raymond, that has a massive population, and you're in a smaller country like a Togo or a Ghana, in order for you to reach that scale, you need to be expanding geographically to get sort of those numbers and that reach that our investment friends are looking for. It's really important.
That's good. Thank you for explaining that to me. I appreciate that. So let's get down to just the, who, what, when, where, how, basically the dates again, and how people get involved. If you have any sponsors you want to mention, that's fine too. But is there a virtual event that goes along with this, or a live streaming that people can get a hold of? Anything that you think might help with the participation of this event? So if you'll share that information with me.
Perfect. Thanks, Mary. Yes, so as Raymond mentioned, the dates of the event are June 12th and 13th in Accra at UPSA, which is the University of Public Studies Accra, in East Legon, for those of you who are familiar with the Accra area. Unfortunately, Mary, we don't have any live streaming available. We really focus on making the experience for those who are attending in person the most meaningful it can be. You can get your tickets online. Mary, I can share with you the link, or anyone who's listening, you can go to sankalpforum.com and you'll find a link to our West Africa Summit page where you can register your ticket. We also have a number of scholarships available. If you cannot, not afford the ticket price, please let us know. Apply for a scholarship. Happy to accommodate as many of those as we can. And yes, I will give a big shout out to a couple of our sponsors: Visa Foundation, Siemens Stiftung, IDRC, AFEX, the Miller Center, and we have a whole host of outreach partners that are really helping us make the most kind of noise around this. Energy Catalyst, sorry, I forgot one, also helping us kind of curate our clean energy sessions. So yeah, huge thanks to our supporters and our sponsors. And we hope to see all of you at Sankalp. Or if not the entire summit, you are welcome to just come for the fashion show, which will be on June 13th at around 6 p.m. So that will be open to anyone who wants to come in across. So all are welcome. Yeah, and we'll be looking for, we usually have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of impact investors, a lot of entrepreneur support organizations that we were talking about, a lot of media like Raymond, and a whole host of other sort of stakeholders. So all are welcome. If you're interested in entrepreneurship and impact, you should definitely be at Sankalp.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will provide the information, the links and what have you on our website. So if you guys will hang tight here just a minute, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. Before I do that, I want to say thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Arielle. We appreciate this. Appreciate our partnership with you, Raymond and Arielle. Pleasure to meet you. And I am going to be looking forward to hearing back on how this all works out. I feel like it's just so needed. And so I'm really impressed how much you've done so far to get this to the place where it is. So, kudos to you, praise to you for what you've done. So anyway, you stay with me for a second and I'll say goodbye to everybody else. If you're watching this on YouTube or one of our other podcast channels, you can go to www.frontrunnersinnovate.com where you'll get this interview, bios on these two lovely peoples. And you'll also get the information that Arielle just mentioned a few minutes ago on how to get involved with the event. And it's coming up pretty fast, so you need to act fast, okay? So thank you again. And yeah, I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.